Hey again, it's Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm. I've packed up a whole bunch of roses. I'm heading off on a road trip here. Our destination is Quadra Island, and I thought I'd pack up the camera and bring you along. Not because I'm making a foray into travel vlogging here at all, although we may see some nice scenery on the BC coast, but rather because I'm going up for a speaking engagement with a garden club up there, and it brought to mind the topic of what role YouTube, Instagram, speaking engagements, and other public relations activities can have in growing your small farm and making yourself successful. Now, I have to say I came at this from a slightly different point of view a few years ago, and my mindset has changed an awful lot. At first, when I saw people doing homesteading or farming and doing that through Instagram, YouTube, and so on, I thought, well, that's not real farming, is it? And you know, I have to make the case in point with a popular YouTuber, Curtis Stone, who I think when I first saw him, he just came off as he had too much of a social media plan. He came into the business knowing what he wanted to do social media-wise, and that struck me as, well, that's not real farming, is it? I mean, to come in and make your farm almost a prop in what you're doing rather than doing the farming itself. And I have to say my viewpoint on this has changed 180 degrees. I look at it now as, boy, wasn't he smart to think about the social media end of his business right as he started building his farm. That's smart, it's good planning, and you know, for me it's snobby to say, well, that's not real farming. I mean, no farmer goes into the business thinking he wants to learn how to be a plumber. But if you don't learn how to repair your irrigation lines, you're either going to have to call somebody in to do that, or you're going to have to learn how to do it yourself. Nobody comes into farming thinking, I want to get really good at accounting, but it's something you're going to have to do as part of your farm business. And, you know, learning from the beginning, making a plan about how you're going to connect with your community, how are you going to sell things, how are you going to reach out to the world as part of your farm plan right from the beginning is just really, really smart planning. And it's one way that a small farmer can compete with bigger nurseries or bigger farms right out of the gate. So we'll talk more about that. I do have to pack up now because I have a ferry to catch, but we'll talk more along the way. So I'm here at the Quadra Island Community Center, and I did my presentation last night. It went fantastically, although it's a bit harrowing talking in front of 50 people. I guess for a second here, I'm going to play devil's advocate and say, yeah, why would you go a long way from home and give a gardening club presentation, which is clearly uncomfortable, takes a lot of time, and really there's not even that much money in it. Usually garden clubs like these can't afford to do much more than a small honorarium of maybe $150 or $200, which certainly doesn't cover the time of travel. So that all said, I guess one of the reasons I do this is because I'm a true believer. I really do want to talk to garden clubs, connect with them, and encourage them to help to maintain and preserve plants of all sorts within the gardening hobby. The other thing I should say is that this garden club did what good garden clubs do to try to make it make sense for a speaker, is they allowed me to sell some plants. So I'll show you the back of my van here was full of plants, and even though they only paid me somewhere in the range of $150 to speak at this event, there was over $1,000 worth of plants in the back of my van, so that really made it worth it. Back home now, and I have a little more time to flesh out, I guess, what you could call engagement marketing activities like this. And I have to admit, I spend a lot of my time laser focused on my business here, thinking, how can I make this make financial sense for me and my family? And so when I do activities like this that take me away from direct farm activities, it gives me a little bit of a gut check. I have to really think about whether it makes sense or not. And the calculation can be pretty tricky. When I take a leap of faith, like I did at Quadra, not knowing whether I had the orders in hand, and take a couple days off the farm, I know that that's going to cost me potting time. That's going to cost me time taking care of my plants and preparing things for sale. So I know that there's a cost to it as well. But, you know, when I've done this in the past, and now I have to roll in some of my other social media activities. At first, there was no clear case for why Instagram and posting pictures to Instagram could make sense for my business. It was just something I was doing to engage with the general gardening community. Until, that is, people started showing up at the farmer's market wanting to buy the plants that they saw me feature there. Same thing goes for things like Facebook, where it has turned out to be a fantastic way of engaging with the local community and promoting things like my local plant sales or plant sale on the farm here. Whereas you could think, well, I spend a lot of time socializing and talking to people about gardening in general terms that don't seem too self-serving, but in the end, building that kind of rapport with the community ends up working to your advantage. Now, you see I roll in here things like social media into the same engagement activities, and to my mind, they're no different. With Instagram, you may target an audience that's a little bit younger and a little more female. With YouTube, you may target an audience that's a little more male and a little younger than the average gardening community. And with Facebook, you may be seeing a lot of the influencers and early adopters there. But there's nothing that really compares well, in my mind, to going out to see a local garden club, a local bee club, a classroom, and going to those in-person engagements where you can meet people directly. And I have to say, I've made some really, really good connections there. Not only customers who I see later at the farmer's market, but even some wholesale customers who have made inquiries now about buying my roses in larger quantities, which I wouldn't have had if I hadn't have gone to these in-person engagements. All right, that should wrap up my thoughts on this topic. I hope you enjoyed the road trip out to Quadra. I know I did, and if you have any questions or comments, please leave those below the video.